U.S. President Joe Biden made his debut at the 76th session of the UNGA, his biggest international summit since the botched Afghanistan pullout. Biden stressed on the fact that the U.S. is not seeking a new Cold War, acknowledged that the increasing concerns about rising U.S.-China tensions remain. Listen in.
We are not seeking a new Cold War or a world divided into rigid blocs. The United States is ready to work with any nation that steps up and pursues peaceful resolution to shared challenges, even if we have intense disagreements in other areas, because we'll all suffer the consequences of our failure.
Biden also said that the U.S. will seek a return to Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, commonly known as the Iran nuclear deal, if Tehran does the same. Last week saw the minor breakthrough in the nuclear talks, with the UN atomic watchdog and Iran reaching an agreement to avert the nuclear deal crisis.
The United States remains committed to preventing Iran from gaining a nuclear weapon. We're working with the P5+1 to engage Iran diplomatically and to seek a return to JCPOA. We're prepared to return to full compliance if Iran does the same.
And as for South Korea, Joe Biden called for a complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula, calling for a plan to increase stability in the peninsula. Listen in.
We seek serious and sustained diplomacy to pursue the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. We seek concrete progress toward an available plan with tangible commitments that would increase stability on the peninsula and in the region, as well as improve the lives of the people in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
Biden once again called for a two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict, saying it was the only way forward for peace in the region.
The commitment of the United States to Israel's security is without question, and our support for an independent Jewish state is unequivocal. But I continue to believe that a two-state solution is the best way to ensure Israel's future as a Jewish democratic state, living in peace alongside a viable, sovereign, and democratic Palestinian state.
The U.S. president has been repeatedly criticized for the botched pullout in Afghanistan. But standing at the UNGA, Joe Biden said that for the first time in 20 years, an American president was addressing the General Assembly with the country not at war. He also called for the end of relentless war and the beginning of relentless diplomacy.
We've ended 20 years of conflict in Afghanistan. And as we close this period of relentless war, we're opening a new era of relentless diplomacy, of using the power of our development aid to invest in new ways of lifting people up around the world, of renewing and defending democracy.
WION-USA Direct from New York with Susan Tehrani.
And our correspondent Susan Tehrani has been joining us with the very latest from New York, dissecting that crucial address delivered by the American president. Susan, let's talk about the issues that the president has addressed, ranging from the friction with China. It's a reference, of course, that he's made when he says that he is not seeking a Cold War. But at the same time, the very mention of a Cold War is enough to grab headlines. And that's something that he has said earlier as well. Tell us more about the backdrop in which this address comes, with the friction with EU over the AUKUS partnership, also the reassurance by Joe Biden to his allies that he will be standing with his friends.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting. While he didn't mention China by name, a lot of his speech really did focus not only on China, but the minute that he did start talking about his foreign policy agenda, he really started with the Indo-Pacific region. He did talk about how he wants to really strengthen the Quad partnership. Again, no mention about China on that. He talked about health security, climate, and emerging technologies. He talked about ASEAN. He also talked about how he wants to really work with NATO and how he has been working with NATO and his European Union allies, trying to strengthen his alliances, and how familiar really those lines of his speech at the GA were to his speech in Brussels, perhaps, when he visited as part of his first overseas trip to Europe. So yes, a lot of talk on intensive diplomacy. He did talk about vigorous competition. While we know he was talking about China, he said that competition does not mean confrontation. That's something that we heard from his press secretary, Jen Psaki, again alluding to China. Yeah, he talks about the Cold War because, you know, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres mentioned that term when he met with Joe Biden on Monday. He said that the tension in the region should not result in a Cold War scenario, which alludes to the fact of how tense the situation in the Indo-Pacific region is. But he also delivered this speech at a time when he's somewhat facing his own international credibility issue. You know, it was just a few weeks back when he had this faulty withdrawal from Afghanistan on the one hand, and now he sort of made this questionable deal. This is something that France might tell you it's questionable, with Australia and the UK on the submarine deal, and sort of looking and recalibrating its alliances in the Indo-Pacific region and alienating a traditional ally like France on the one hand, and trying to see how relationship with Europe is going to progress. And then on the other hand, you know, you sort of want to see how America is going to move forward in its counterterrorism measures as well, because NATO sort of, while it agreed that it should withdraw from Afghanistan, it has been no secret that it did not agree with the manner that it withdrew. And again, while the president did pat himself on the back for being the first U.S. president after 20 years of ending the war in Afghanistan and standing behind that podium, the irony cannot be lost that it's, again, just a few weeks ago, he talked about how, you know, this is not the world of 9/11. The U.S. is not the world of 9/11. Counterterrorism measures are stronger, but there was a drone strike that mistakenly killed innocent Afghans instead of an ISIS-K terrorist in Afghanistan as part of his new counterterrorism strategy. So these are all of the backdrops of where the speech really came from. But yes, in terms of words, in terms of setting the stage for his foreign policy, it was very familiar. It was a multilateral, it was an invitation to multilateralism and alliance. We'll have to see whether his actions match his words or not. Skeptics will tell you the fact that he was in and out of New York and didn't seize the opportunity to meet with more world leaders while he was here at the United Nations sort of indicates the fact that he might continue to move towards going at it alone a little more than not, a little more than perhaps, you know, world leaders would like.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.